Greg Papa here, and making the transition from work life to retirement can be jarring and disorienting, but it doesn't have to be. Greg O'Donnell and the team at the O'Donnell Financial Group are dedicated to achieving a smooth transition into retirement life, and they can help you prepare to retire at a time that works for you. Sooner than you'd think, you may have an entirely different lifestyle, but it doesn't have to be in one giant leap. The experts at O'Donnell Financial Group will help you craft a plan tailored to your desired timeline. Transition into retirement confidently and on your own terms. So don't wait. Contact Greg O'Donnell today. He's the CEO and founder of O'Donnell Financial Group for a free review of your financial situation. Call him right now, 866-496-2300. That's 866-496-2300. Or visit him online at odfigroup.com. That's odfigroup.com.
Faithful, filter out the noise, and kick it with KNBR on the gram for everything 49ers. Follow the sports leader on Instagram at KNBR.
Hello, friends. Pop and Lund, we appreciate it. By the way, I don't know if I ever mentioned this. Mike Sando, 11:30 with the QB Tears. I think we tore him apart last year, but it's not
Mike
his
Sando
server.
now.
Yeah.
You were out getting a sandwich from Mike's, weren't you?
Oh, you know what? I'm going to say this without opinion, then we'll get to Steve Young. I was heard there was no food. Sit through a meeting, you get no food?
Oh, man.
What the hell is that?
What kind of culture is this?
I was just listening. They're doing all sorts of numbers, and
they're going to bring in food around.
You just
right?
Your eyes glaze
The
over.
food, it'll be catered later for lunch.
Like 7% of the, and we're just like, everyone's in there. No food. I was just told that. So, never mind. Whatever.
Not even later? Not even at
I
noon?
don't know. Maybe. I just haven't seen anything yet. And I'm,
No,
believe me, I'm
it's
Hawkeye in
early.
that food.
It's early.
Yeah, we'll see.
Einstein's Bagels, no. We're going Ike's and
Yeah, I mean, Breck's burritos.
I want
and
to see what
something.
kind of pizza they bring in.
Yeah, gotta have, minimum pizza. I mean, minimum. Anyway, Mike Sando, 11:30 for the QB tiers. And remember, that is done through survey. It's not Mike's opinion. And last year we talked to him. I heard him on a couple of radio stations already. He's going around with this thing. So we'll talk to him at 11:30. Brock is up, by the way. Stock is up on Brock Purdy. All right, here is Steve Young, the Hall of Famer yesterday. Weekly joins Tolbert and Copes, and his first installment was yesterday. And, of course, they talked a ton about the contracts and everything else, trying to get a new contract done with Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk. Here is Steve first. Ayuk and Williams should be placing more urgency on the 49ers Super Bowl window.
If the window's open as it's going to be for some time right now, everybody needs to be on board. And that's why Trent, let's not forget, Trent, I understand. You're the best tackle in the game. I get it. No one doesn't say it to you. No one doesn't appreciate it. Is this? You've set the market. I think he set the market. I'm sure if I'm wrong, I'll get yelled at. But I think he set the market, and I think Jed and everybody's willing to do that because he's the best tackle in the league. And then now you're going to come back and say, no, I want to set it again because there's another $8 million collectively that I can go get, and I'm on the last contract, and I'm getting old. It's like, bro, do you not see what we're trying to get done here? And look, it doesn't mean that Jed should keep that money. It doesn't mean that, I get it. It's all contextual to your original question. And so I think that the noise that Trent has made, which luckily Brandon's covered him a little bit, I don't know. When you're the best in the league, you've been here for a while, you're older, you're more mature, there's a way to do this that doesn't, now we're still here. And I don't, look, Brandon's caused his own grief in some ways. I'm sure the 49ers own their part of it, but Trent's, done the same, created some grief as well.
Okay, so focusing on Trent there, we'll play a couple more of these cuts. But the overriding discussion point for him there is they should play more, put more emphasis on winning versus the contract. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I don't. Steve played in a different era of football. Plan B free agency just came in the early 90s, but there was free agency. I mean, his 94 Super Bowl champion team was probably the first that I'm not going to say was largely bought, but they brought a lot of guys on the defensive side of the ball, including the guy that won Defensive Player of the Year that year, Deion Sanders. And he was there one and done, and then he went to Dallas. So it was starting to change then.
But they didn't have the restrictions they do now. That's the difference. They didn't have those kind of as stringent restrictions as they have now. It was easier.
What do you mean?
It was easier to keep all these guys.
Yeah, well, the salaries weren't as enormous. But you still had, I don't know if they even had the John Elway rule yet, which was the franchise tag. I think that came in later. Free agency, Plan B free agency was very restrictive. I said, not the top guys did not go. It was the other guys. And then the free agency did come in, and, people like Ken Norton Jr., and they brought a lot of guys on the defense that year in Deion to get him over the top and get the monkey off his back. But this is professional football. These guys they love the game. They play the game, and they love the game, and they work hard. It's 12 months out of the year. But I don't think anybody in the locker room thinks they're being selfish because they know that their time is going to come. So I hear what Steve is saying. I wonder, with a galaxy of stars on their team, how would they have paid Steve Young, Jerry Rice, T.O., for who, for what, bar none, Brent Jones? I haven't even gotten to the defense yet.
They couldn't.
I mean, at some point, you're not keeping those. Now, I'm not saying there wasn't, and Eddie had an interesting way of circumventing the cap, but a lot of the rules were put in place because of DeBartolo and the star power that was the Niners, but it wasn't as strict as you're saying on the cap now, and you can't pay them all. But Trent Williams I don't think there's anybody that would begrudge him. They know he needs to make more money. We went through the guys that are making more, and I talked about how does he circumvent the fines, and I texted David Lombardi, could Trent Williams retire then unretire to avoid the fines? And he said no. He would have had to retire before the fines accrued. I said, what if they tear up the contract, sign a whole new contract, and he didn't hold out under the new contract? He said, it doesn't matter. The fines would still exist on the new deal even if he tears it up. So I don't think there's any way to overcome that. But that's a big number. If you're looking to bump him up $8 or $9 million this year, John, he has to pay a $5 million offset to that, to the league, for skipping preseason games and training camp practices. That makes it hard. But I understand what Steve is saying. But the guys do, they know what they're up against. And Trent came here to win. He could have gone other places to win. He wanted to come here and play for Kyle and play in playoff games. And he got to title games and Super Bowls and didn't get there. So, but this is professional football, and these guys have to be compensated. Trent Williams has no more guaranteed money on his contract. If he tears his ACL, and I don't even want to say it, Aaron Rodgers did it 4 snaps into his new life with the New York Jets. If Trent does that opening night against the Jets,
I'd be done.
What are they on the hook? I mean, he's a hurt player. He would be protected to some degree, but he has no more guaranteed money on his deal.
All right, here's the second cut. Steve Young more on Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams' approaches to their contract extensions.
And I think that, with the big superstars, when you're the best defensive end in the league like Nick Bosa, or you're the best tackle in football like Trent Williams, going back to the well or holding out or making sure that you get every last dollar, everybody kind of because you're going to set the market. Nick Bosa was going to set the market. Trent's going to set the market. You kind of get it in a way. It's a bummer. I wish that Trent would have done this earlier, or the 49ers, and I get all that. But Brandon, because of his youth and because he's not going to set the market, yet wants to set the market, says, I want to be traded. And then goes through this, I don't know how to put it, but it was like, bro, if you want to tear up the contract and do something big, then you might want to pick, you might want to go the 5th year and go prove it out, to make sure that everybody's on board with you setting the market. Or if you're going to ask to be traded, then when they make a trade that works for them, you got to say you're up for it. You don't say, oh, no, that doesn't work for me. Because then it was like, well, what do you want?
Again, I think he's going back to kind of an old school mentality, and I respect the hell out of Steve Young, and he knows a heck of a lot more than me. But the way that the league works is he's already proven it. Brandon Ayuk is proven that he's not a $14 million player. And given what happened in the market in the offseason, he's up with those other guys. I don't know that he's trying to set the market, which is what Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb have done, but he's obviously looking at something that the 49ers haven't gotten to, and I think that's where he is. They could force him to play on the 14, but that would be a major problem. If they want to push it down and say you're going to play for the 14 when a guy's only made $12 million in his career, he's ultimately going to come in and play for it, but he's not going to be happy, and that's going to make for a major problem for a team trying to win a Super Bowl.
Well, I'm not sure what he's going to do. He goes back and forth daily and hourly. And Steve's point about Ayuk, I do agree with that one. If you ask to be traded, be careful what you ask for. If you ask to be traded and then they trade you and you don't want to go for whatever reason, you don't like Cleveland, New England. I mean, New England offered him reportedly $32.5 million. He would have been, right there with A.J. Brown, more than A.J. Brown, behind now Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb. So what are you after? The Niners have a budget. This is what they're allocating. And I think they bumped that up to a reasonable number. In the first 3 years they've agreed to, and now they just got to agree to the 4th year. But this BA situation is befuddling because this is one that could have been done before. It's just taken a long time. Steve, the one thing I always thought Steve Young, when he was done playing, because I used to see him. Lee Steinberg was his agent, and I'd see Steve on a Tuesday night during the season giving a speech at the Kiwanis Club in San Bruno. I'm like, what's he doing? I thought he'd be the senator of Utah or something more noble than being a sportscaster. Now that he's not doing that as much with his law degree, why doesn't Steve become an agent? And then, he probably doesn't want to do anything right now. He wants to retire and enjoy his family so he can do what he wants. But I wonder if he was an agent, as an ex-player who, was born in an era where they didn't make the enormous money players make, I'm not sure he'd make the argument that Trent, just go in and play, even though you have no guaranteed money, and BA, play under the 14 when people at your position are making double that. And, what's it going to be like if you get hurt this year? So it's interesting. Steve's a smart guy, obviously a really tough player in a tough era, but he also has a legal background. So, some of his takes do surprise me.
He's brilliant, but I think that I think what is happening here is, and I think fans have a misperception here, is it's not, they'd like to win a championship. They need to take care of their families. And I know that sounds crazy. Trent Williams is basically going to be fine, but he looks at himself at 36 and says, this is it for me. I got a few years left. A bunch of guys are making more than me, and nobody's better than me. I'm going to get my last contract. And what he owes himself is to make as much money as he can. He'd love to win a championship, but he's going to make money. Same thing with Brandon Ayuk. He's 26 years old. He feels like he should make X amount of dollars to put his body on the line every week. His job now is to make as much money as he possibly can for his family and generations after that. A championship would be nice, but your Super Bowl ring doesn't pay mortgages. And so these guys want to make money. I mean,
and he can do both.
Right, he can.
Who's
but
to say that we're 2 weeks away from the start of the year, so no one's missing games yet. If he does miss a game, that would be the debate we can have. Chris Jones missed the first game that Kansas City played last year, and they lost the game. And they did not have a great year. They did not host the AFC Championship game. They had to go on the road and win in Buffalo and win in Baltimore, but they got it done, and they won a Super Bowl. So now is the time to take care of this. It was probably the time to take care of it a few months ago.
A long time ago.
But the nature of it, deadlines just spur action. Emmitt Smith held out 4 days before he signs. T.J. Watt held out. He had a hold in 1 year in Latrobe, and he signed right before their first game. He was Defensive Player of the Year that year. So let's see if it does. I'm hopeful, and I think they both will play 2 weeks from yesterday against the New York Jets, and then we'll analyze their play. If they're off a little bit in the first game, they may be tough for Trent and for Ayuk now since he's missed so much time. But I don't think they're giving up on a championship just because they're trying to get paid here in August.
All right, give us your thoughts. 415-808 KNBR, Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line and call-in line the same, 415-808-5627. We'll discuss coming up next. It is Cut Down Day. We'll keep you up to date on what's going on with the Niners and the rest of the league. It's Pop and Lund on the Sports Leader.
Bro.
Papa and Lund continue live from the KNBR Casino Matrix Progressive Jackpot Studios. Casino Matrix Progressive Jackpots are here. Where are you? Just drop in. Please play responsibly. 1-800-GAMBLER.
What's happening? Thanks for joining us, Papa and Lund, on a Tuesday edition of the show. Mike Sando is going to join us for the QB tiers. He has moved up, or they have moved up, I guess. He's talking to coaches, coordinators, GMs, and the such. And he just reports the news. So he's going to join us in the 11 o'clock hour. We're just playing the cuts from Steve Young. And Steve wants to talk.
We got a caller on the line. Calling
Steve.
from Provo, Utah.
I know he's in Provo. It's the great Steve Young. It's the Hall of Famer. What's happening? How are you?
From the Peninsula, boys. No,
Nice.
you guys
How
make
are you,
good.
Stevie?
When I hear like the back and forth, I like what you said, and so I was like, you know what, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I realized, for me, I am like everyone, feeling like, you know, the pain of last year and wanting to get there, and like everyone jump in, you know. Everyone on board now. And so you make a good point about Trent's guaranteed money. That really struck me as a player. You don't want to be stuck like that. Now, how it gets done, is it Jed's fault because he won't pay him the money and won't guarantee it? It's bilateral. So I think I screwed that up. So I wanted to at least say that you guys came up with a take that really meant something to me. So I appreciate it.
Well, that's nice. I don't remember. Did you ever go through like these kind of negotiations when you were playing?
100%. 100%. I got a funny. You got a second? I got a funny story.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
You know, and they can be tense, and you can feel hurt. I mean, you can really, because the dynamics are not fair in some ways, right? Because Jed and John and Kyle sit on on a side where, you know, equity values have gone up about almost $500 million a year for the last 20 years. And so, and then the players are trying to get theirs, right? And so you make a good point, is like, who cares how they get it done? They deserve and need to get those dollars. And so that resonates with me as well. It's just contextually, you want to figure out a way where we hold the locker room, everyone understands what we're trying to get done and how much it matters in the spirit of stuff, how people go play. Because as Bill Walsh used to say, everyone needs to share an element of love for each other or respect, or, you know, that's, you know, shared common experiences is how the locker rooms, that's how you get there. And so I understand fully. And so I think, you know, listening to my comments back, it's like, yeah, Steve, that's not the full measure of what's happening here. So I especially with the Trent situation, that really means that anyway. So for me, a quick story. I was time for a contract. It was I don't know if it was acrimonious, but it was tense and tough. But you stay quiet. No one says a word, like what you're seeing right now with Trent and Brandon. No one's, you know, you don't want nothing in public is going to make a difference. And so I was at the time with a good friend going down to the Navajo Reservation with a scholarship program, and we would go down and meet with the kids in different little cities in the Navajo Nation and tell them about the scholarship program. If you graduate from high school, we can go to trade school, we get to junior college, we could, and really try to, fire them up to, kind of get out of high school. And so we were making these trips in the off season, right during these times. And so I get to this place, and I'm not going to, it was a really, really small community where some of the people were still living in thatched huts, in hoguns, kind of traditional. And so I remember being in one, talking to a group of kids about the scholarship program. And, hey, and then we had a little Q&A or something. And the kid goes, hey, I hear you are on a contract situation. And here I am in this most remote place in America, probably. And, it's like, yeah, what the heck? Just let it rip. Just let it happen. And so I kind of cathartically told everyone what the deal was.
What year was this, Steve? When was this?
What was that? I don't even remember. So the next day in the Chronicle with a byline from, right? Yeah, I was in that. And the next day in the Chronicle, the byline from, I want to say Chinle, Arizona, was this kid, this industrious high schooler that said, hey, you know what? I'm a journalist, and that's the lesson: is keep your mouth shut. So there you go.
Wow. Paul Zimmerman Jr. I think it was Dr. Z was listening. Well, one thing is, the guys today don't have another league to go to. You did have the USFL and the contract you signed there with the LA Express.
You're conflating the issue because that was 1 year at the very beginning. It was not
right. See, the one thing I always wanted to ask you about when you I think it was when you were leaving Tampa and you came to the 49ers, Al Davis always told me the story that you really wanted to be a Raider and it just didn't work out. Was there ever a scenario where you would go from Tampa to the Raiders and not the 49ers, Steve?
No. Well, Hugh Culverhouse had, who owned the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Ray Perkins had come in and replaced Lehman Bennett as the coach, and Ray Perkins in my first meeting said he hated lefties and hated scramblers, and I thought that was a bad sign. And
very perceptive even then.
Yeah, so then he called me and said, we traded you to the St. Louis Cardinals, and I freaked out because it was like, oh my gosh, can it get any harder than it already is? Because we just finished the season with 2-14 against a 2-14 team who's going to get the number 1 draft choice. And anyway, so I called Mr. Culverhouse and said, Mr. Culverhouse, you and I hit it off, and we had this great relationship, and I thought I was going to be your quarterback for life, and that's what you said, and and he goes, well, they got a new coach, and he wants to go in a different direction, and I said, well, at least let me have a chance to find a home that that I could that I'd thrive, and I'd really appreciate that. So he called the trade-off and said, look, I'll give you a week to go figure out what works best for you. And in that week, Lee Steinberg had talked to Bill, Coach Walsh, and that's where we started. He met me in back at school, and we worked out, and then it all went from there. So I don't remember ever having a conversation. The only thing that ever happened with the Raiders was in '89, like a couple years in. Yeah. There was right around the draft, I got a call that said, because I was at a point where I wasn't playing. It was awkward, and everyone knows all that, and wanted to play, and so I'm sure there was efforts on both sides to see what we could do, and I got a call saying, look, you've been traded to the Raiders right before the draft, and then I never got another call, and so I guess it didn't happen. So that part, Greg, you might know more than I do about what happened.
Wow.
But
well, Lee and Al were close. I mean, they were right. They talked a lot.
Yeah, no, and I think every time I saw Mr. Davis, I think he appreciated. I was an odd duck back then. Today, this is my game, right? Today's game is my game, and I would have really thrived, and no one would have thought anything of my style. But back then, you needed to find people that kind of appreciated the oddity, and he definitely did. And so did Bill. And I think that's why I appreciate both of them, that they saw through the prototype and could see that there's something else that you could do that could be profitable. And I always appreciated that from Mr. Davis.
The great Steve Young, Hall of Famer, joining us. It's Pop and Lund here on the Sports Leader. Do you think this whole thing, whether it be Trent or Brandon Ayuk, because I think we've already passed the deadline, but the deadline is 13 days now. Nick Bosa came in late last year. Do you think because we're getting so close and players don't want those fines from missing games? I know Trent's accrued a lot of money. Brandon Ayuk is not going to have to pay anything because he's on that 50-year thing. But do you think because that's the deadline, essentially, that these deals will get done before that Monday night game?
We've blown through some stop signs on both sides, and they're different. I think they're both different situations. Trent's situation is very different than Brandon's situation. I tried to articulate that in a very whatever way I did yesterday, but they're different, and that's why Trent's will get done because Trent was looking for guaranteed money and the best player in the league. That'll get done. The timing of it is weird, and I guess I should blame both sides, right? Because it's like the timing's weird. Like we're gonna get it done. Brandon's situation is different, and Brandon's situation is that you mentioned it, Greg, that he saw the trade. He said he wanted a trade, then he didn't want it. So now he's kind of put himself in a spot. Like, do I want to stay? If I want to stay, here's the deal. If you don't want to stay, here's the deal. And I think I'm guessing he's just kind of waiting for someone to blink, and I get the sense that that's a different situation, and that's look, every player you've got, and Greg, I think what you said hit me like a ton of bricks. Every player's got to go do what they got to do to take care of their families, and so that part, that's when I said, you know what, yesterday I was a fan. Like, I want everyone in. I want to go beat everybody. And I feel people coming from behind us, and I don't like it. And so, there's an emotional part of that, when you said that, Greg, that's why I called. It's like, you know what? He's right. I got to be very careful about this because you've got to give people the space to go cut their deals against an entity that has, again, we know the values, equity values of NFL squads. I mean, they've 20 times in the last 20 years. We got to have that context as well. So anyway, enough of that. I thought what you said, Greg, was important to me because I felt that, and I just said, you know what, I appreciate you having me back on just because.
Well, thank you. I thought you were actually calling to yell at me, so I thought we were going to have our first little sparring session now.
Yeah.
We love you. But let me ask you a question because, Lee was my agent for years, and I would run into both of you, and you would be, giving a speech on a Tuesday night during the football season. I'm like, what is he setting himself up for when he's done playing? I thought you would go into politics and, being a sportscaster, and you were great at it for a long time, is not the most noble profession, I must say. Now that you're done with that,
bro?
No, I know. Did you ever think with your law degree, Steve, about becoming a player agent?
No, I didn't. I've ended up in the finance world. I didn't know where the second half would end up for me. My dad always said, I always told my dream was to be Roger Staubach, and he said, that's a dream, that's 1% chance. So, or less than 1% chance. So what's the plan? And I would tell him, well, the plan is 80% chance. I'll go to college, then I'll go to law school, and then, I'll be a lawyer like you. And he said, okay, that's 80% chance. Okay, good. Because it's good to have a dream. It's good to have a plan. And he meant that all the way through. So that's how I got through law school, was basically because he kept pecking at me because I thought we were going to do the plan. I'm like, frack, the plan is the dream now, bro. We got it all set. But I think for me, no, I afterwards I ended up in finance for, just kind of led me there. But I didn't know. Coaching was so intense, and I really realized I loved playing, and teaching it was more frustrating to me. So I knew that I probably wouldn't be a long-term coach. And then what I would have loved to be is where John Lynch is. I think that's a fun, wonderful, challenging, incredible place to be, to influence a team like that. And he's been the best, or one of the best in the league. And so I love John for what he's been able to prove to everybody, that you can play in the league and you can thrive in management. And I think that's very meaningful.
Great stuff. Hey, Steve, we always appreciate talking to you. Thank you so much, man.
I appreciate it. I listen to you as I drive around, and you guys are great. And when you're right, you're right. So I just wanted to, that was it. You guys are great. See you.
You're the best,
lefty
man.
is saying we're right, John. Wow.
That's the great Steve Young.
Second winningest left-handed quarterback in history, and we had them both in the Bay Area. Kenny the Snake Stabler was number 1, and Steve was number 2. And
Steve's the best, man.
Champion.
He's awesome. He's really good. There's nothing to apologize for or anything like that. Not that he was doing that, but it was just. I think he brings up a great point. Is I think what it proves is we all just want this to get done. We're all fans at the end of the day, and we want it to get done. And it's some parts of the Brandon Ayuk thing is inexplicable. Trent Williams seems pretty. Not cut and dry, but the Trent Williams situation happens all the time. The Brandon Ayuk situation doesn't, where this market that blew up because of the receivers, and he had a certain deal that was done. You and I talked about at the beginning. It was a 3-year deal, kind of like Debo's or DK's or Terry McLaurin's, that exploded because of this crazy offseason of wide receivers, which has never happened before. And it's gone back and forth from trade requests to weird stuff on social media to podcasts talking about Jaden Daniels. I mean, it's seriously, everything has happened in this whole scenario. And here we are, 13 days away from the start of the season, and it's still not done. Everyone's frustrated. Brandon's frustrated. The Niners frustrated. The fans are frustrated. It's just that's the point it's gotten to.
Because people don't have any patience anymore. They could sign 13 minutes before the first game and go out and play. It's just the nature of professional sports. It's happened before.
I know, but that's not the best scenario.
I mean, when did Deion Sanders sign his Niner contract in '94? That was late. He didn't play every game that year, and he wound up being Defensive Player of the Year. It's just. You don't want it to happen that way, but these are professionals. It's not like they're joining a new team. They'll get it done when they're going to get it done. The point we were making is that Trent's situation is different than Brandon's, and I think Steve realized that.
One's at the beginning, one's at the end. I mean, it's
but when they did Trent's deal, and you looked at the way it was structured, a lot like Debo's contract beginning next year, you're going to have to make an adjustment to his contract or let him go. The fact that the way it was front-loaded as far as the guarantees and nothing on the back end guaranteed, I mean, for Trent Williams to be looking at a contract, and he's a smart guy, where he's making $20.8 this year, but not a penny of it is fully guaranteed. It's not guaranteed at all. $23.4 next year, and then in 26, $33.1, all non-guaranteed money. I mean, who's playing under a non-guaranteed money that's a first-team All-Pro 3 straight years like Trent Williams? Nobody. So I think they all knew they had to adjust his contract. It's just been hard to do it. Maybe the age and the Ayuk situation. Maybe if Ayuk signed back in May, right after the draft, or before Amon-Ra signed, or right around that time, then they would have had cost certainty on this year and been able to reduce his number and get Trent signed. So I think they possibly are interwoven, but they're completely different situations.
It's all Purdy's fault. I mean, that's what it comes down to. That's what you should have said to Steve. It's all because the quarterbacks have to get paid so much damn money. That's what it is. It's all their fault. All right, we'll continue the conversation. We had to juggle some things around, but that's as worth it as it gets to talk to Steve Young is awesome. We juggled. So we got, by the way, we just got a call from Mike Pereira's people. Well, that's Mike Pereira himself. And he's going to join us at 11:30. So we got the great Mikey Rulebooks on at 11:30. Caught up with him. It was great to see him back on TV. And then we've moved Mike Sando and the quarterback tiers, in which you're going to be happy this year versus last year. We had real tears coming out of your eyes, or you were very angry about where Mike's list was as far as Brock. He's going to join us at 12:30. So we readjust everything. Just heard from Steve. It was great. And then we got Mikey Rulebooks 11:30, Mike Sando 12:30. That's what we're doing. Plus, the Niners have got a couple of cuts on the docket, so we'll tell you who it is next on the Sports Leader.
Can you send me Steve Young?
Now, from the O'Donnell Financial Group Sports Desk. Learn more at odfigroup.com. O'Donnell Financial Group, because planning is a process, not a product.
Oh, sorry, I'm jamming out to the music here, and I forgot I had to read something here. Steve Young joined Tolbert & Coast and us, and we stole him. I think he's going to be here forever, Derek. That's right, Denner. But he did join Tolbert and Copes yesterday afternoon and gave his thoughts on Brandon Newt, Trent Williams holdout. Check out that stuff on the KNBR app, YouTube, and KNBR socials.
Papa and Lund Show now continues. Download the KNBR app and listen anywhere, anytime. We are KNBR. 104.5 and 680. The sports leader.
All right, cut down day. Thanks for joining us, Papa and Lund. So again, the redone schedule for today. Bottom of the hour, Mikey Rulebook's Mike Pereira on his triumphant return to Fox after his health issues, which was excellent to see. And then at 12:30, Mike Sando of The Athletic does a tremendous job, and he's got his quarterback tiers, and he's been all over the place. And he's going to join us to talk about him because Brock Purdy is up 13 spots, his very number, and the number of days until the 49ers opener. So lucky 13s today, and Mike Sando joins us at 12:30. So that's the way it's going to be. Here so far are 49ers cuts. Robbie Chosen, not a surprise. Tanner Mordecai, not a surprise. Those are our two so far.
So they did them, right now they're doing them. So and I think, Kyle and John, it's not like the old days when the Turk brought the playbook in. I think they're told to come talk to him. But John reaches out to every guy in the roster that they cut, and they cut 5 yesterday, and they cut a couple. So with Mordecai, the question now is he cut and gone, or is he cut and, hey, we'd like to get you on the practice squad tomorrow? But then, what does that do with Brandon Allen and Joshua Dobbs? I think it's probably excessive to have 3 on the 53-man roster and 1 on the practice squad, but this team had to play 4 quarterbacks in one game, it seemed like, in a championship game in Philadelphia, and they like Mordecai. I know Brian Griese loves him. He's got a good arm. He's smart. He's good for the system and his mobility. So we'll see. Will Mordecai get scooped up by somebody? Bailey Zappi got cut by New England yesterday, early this morning, John. So some of these quarterbacks that teams have an eye on or have a connection with somebody in the building may bring him in. So let's just see where Mordecai is. They did it early to give him time. With Robbie Chosen, and Kyle talked about what a great runner he is, and he does. He's got long legs. He doesn't look a lot like a football player. Looks more like a NBA wing. But he had some good years, obviously, with the New York Jets. And then, later on in Carolina in 2020, he had a huge year with 95 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But they brought him in as a camp body. They had so many wide receivers. Frank Darby was here for a minute. They brought in Kirkland as well. He got released yesterday. Robbie Chosen, Robbie Anderson, is a guy who was a pretty good player not too long ago. I wonder if he'll resurface somewhere else. It's just his body. It's 6'3", 185 pounds. He's not going to block like a Kyle Shanahan wide receiver, but he certainly runs routes and he makes himself available. So neither of those guys are a surprise. I don't think they'll, maybe Robbie Chosen goes on the practice squad. I would doubt it, but you never know tomorrow. I think the key thing is now they did Mordecai early. Was that because somebody else wanted to put him on their roster? Let's see where that goes. And, with the 49ers, possibly, even if they keep Allen and Dobbs behind Brock, move Mordecai to the practice squad tomorrow.
I think the most likely thing, just because unless somebody just absolutely loves Mordecai, who has a pretty good arm, but if a guy knows your offense and spent camp with you, you can probably release him and then just kind of keep tabs on him and see what happens. And he already knows your offense, and you can bring him back in, get him caught up to speed pretty quickly. But I think that they've got a pretty good situation with the 2 guys that they have. They're not going to release either of those guys because I do think one of those would get picked up. But a lot of times, we all fear that guys are going to get picked up, but the majority of the time the guys get through waivers. And so I think that's what's going to happen. I think they keep Mordecai on the couch and hope that they can bring him back if they have an extreme situation. I'd say this, that if you have to worry about where Tanner Mordecai is, your season's over anyway, right? I mean,
he's a developmental guy. He's not for now. He's to develop. And Brian Griese loves him. He does have a good skill set. He's not a big guy, and Brock's not a big guy, but he's got a big arm. He loads up when he throws the ball. He has mobility. He's fast. He ran a 4.46 40 as a quarterback. I mean, I don't know what Dobbs' time is. Dobbs can run. I don't think he ran a 4.46. But the bottom line is, it's hard enough to get your third quarterback work. The training camp's over now. It's go time. They got to come back tomorrow for the player for their purpose dinner. I think they have a workout on Thursday. Then everybody in the league has to have Labor Day weekend off. I don't know if they'll bring him back Monday because the game is on a Monday the following week. But in any event, you're not getting reps. And he didn't get a lot, number 4, as the 4th-string quarterback, Tanner Mordecai. But now you don't get any. It is strictly getting Brock ready for Robert Saleh. The backup quarterback will run the scout team. The third quarterback hardly gets anything. That's why last year at this time, or a week earlier, John, when it was obvious Sam Darnold was going to be the 2 and Trey was going to be the 3, that they, Trey, you're not going to get any reps. How are you going to get better here? Darnold's going to be the scout team quarterback. We don't have a role for you. Let's just trade you. And now I do wonder what Dallas will do today with Trey Lance. After a 5-interception game on the weekend, and those were all on him. Sometimes you see 5 interceptions and the ball get tips and wide receivers run the wrong route and their mistake. Those look to me like they were all on Trey.
It was Tony Jefferson baiting him every time. An inexperienced guy staring down the route.
He's so inaccurate. He's so inaccurate with the ball. He throws some good balls, and then it's Trey low, it's Trey high. Anyway, so the point is with Mordecai, you'd like to keep him around, but how do you develop him? If you have Brock and Brandon and Josh on the team, the fourth quarterback's not going to get any work. So I don't know if it's worth the endeavor to do that, and then we'll see what they ultimately do if they do keep both quarterbacks, which I think they will do. And then we talked about the scout team. You may even flip Allen and Dobbs as far as your scout team quarterback week to week. If you're getting ready for Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford, let Brandon Allen run the team. If you're getting ready for Kyler Murray and a running quarterback, maybe Dobbs is your scout team quarterback. And it'll be interesting to see, what they do with 1, 2, and 3. And one thing that changed yesterday, John, we just casually mentioned it. I don't know why teams wouldn't have 3 quarterbacks on the roster all year now, because the NFL Players Association vetoed what we thought was going to be a new rule this year, where you could have 2 quarterbacks on the 53, 1 on the practice squad, and then on Saturday, elevate the practice squad quarterback to the 53, and he's your emergency third. The Players Association doesn't like that, because if you're on the 53, you make more money than being on the practice squad. So they said no to it. So you can't do that. So if you got an emergency third quarterback rule in the NFL, and I'm hearing Tennessee does not want a third quarterback, they're going to keep the 2 that they have. Will Levis backed up by Mason Rudolph. But if you're allowed the extra roster spot, why wouldn't you have a third quarterback on your roster?
Yeah, makes sense. But I understand what the players union is saying, but like you said, it makes the best or the most sense to have a healthy third, but they're not going to do it that way. One trade that just happened, he was granted an opportunity. That was Ernest Jones, the linebacker for the Rams. He goes from, with 1 year left on his deal, from L.A. to Tennessee. So moves are happening. So we'll keep you updated on everything that's going on. But excited to get Mikey Rulebooks back on the show. It was really cool to see Mike Pereira back on the tube and working for Fox, and with all those health issues. We had him on a couple of times when we needed some clarification on rules last year, but it's just welcome him back. Mikey Rulebooks, plus some things to know about the NFL upcoming season. Like you just said, the quarterback thing looked like it was going to go in place, but now it's not. So what other things do you need to know going into the season? Our good friend Mike Pereira joins us next, only here on The Sports Leader.
Hey, it's Greg Papa here. Football is back, and I'm fired up about the red and gold, and I'm still slightly obsessed with Tony's Pizza in the North Beach. It's the best I've ever had. Tony's has been ranked #1 in the world, so I'm not the only one who thinks that, and it's my go-to spot for Neapolitan, New York, Detroit, Sicilian, and Grandma-style pizzas. They make fresh pastas as well. They're spicy bucatini. Mamma mia. And don't forget about Tony's other locations like Capo's, where he makes delicious tavern-style cracker-thin and deep-dish pizzas. One of his specialties there, the Chicago Italian beef sandwiches. They are large and in charge here. They have a good young quarterback. They're coming to Levi's later in the year. But I digress. Save room for dessert after your meal. Finish it off with the best cannoli in the Bay Area. You gotta love tiramisu as well. And then the next morning when you're hungry again, get up early, take a stroll through the North Beach and try his homemade sourdough bread, pastries, New York bagels at his bakery, Toscano Brothers. And don't forget to hit, when you're at Chase Center, Oracle, or Levi Stadium this year, Tony's Slice House locations, the fast casual restaurants serving up delicious slices. So bring back football and never forget Tony's Pizza.
Wherever you are around the globe, stream your faithful home of 49ers football 24/7, 365 on KNBR.com. This is the sports leader.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us on a Tuesday. It's Pop and Lund. And it's our pleasure. Weeks ago, I'm watching Fox, and I didn't know Mikey was coming back that weekend, and all of a sudden there's Mike Pereira, and I'm watching football with my wife. I go, that's my friend Mike. He's back. She wasn't as impressed as I was, but I was happy to see Mike Pereira back. Had the back issues. He is back, and he's rolling, and we had him on a few times last year, but he is back with Fox, and he joins us courtesy of the UMA guest line. What's happening? Ooh, that's a good pick, Pop. What's going on?
Man, you ruined my morning already.
Why?
Your wife wasn't impressed?
I know. I couldn't believe it. No, she was impressed.
God.
After I explained to her who you were, she was very impressed. And your credentials, I said, you don't understand.
Yeah. Everybody said, well, it was good to see you back. Well, listen, I'd have gone and done a Tiddlywinks game just to get back anywhere. So I was just so excited to get back to work again. And now here I sit and I go, okay, let me see. Am I going back to work this week? Yes. I have 3 college games on Thursday. I have 2 on Friday. And I have 8 on Saturday.
So you're saying you wanted to be back, but now
back.
you're like,
You are back. When we football was not the same without you last year, Mike. We know that, and great to have you back, and you sound great as well. So we got to get right to the biggest rule change, and maybe the history of the NFL. One of them is this dynamic kickoff rule, which I think we saw a little sampling of what we're going to see in the preseason. Garendo always able to pop one Friday night in Vegas, 93 yards. But we're going to see it for real coming up a week from Thursday. Just give me your thoughts about the dramatic change to the kickoff rule and just your observations on what you saw from August football, Mike.
Well, I mean, obviously this is the biggest, or it could be the biggest change that we've had in a long time. But I think we're kind of jumping to conclusions here when we think that we're going to have all these returns, because I think once the regular season starts, not going to be the case. You know, everybody talks about there was only 2 out of 10 returned last year in the regular season. So you're comparing the 7 out of 10 in the preseason this year return to 2 out of 10 in the regular season. But that's apples and oranges. When you look at the average returns this year in the preseason, 7 out of 10. Last year in the preseason, 5.5 out of 10. So you see a lot of experimentation in the in the preseason, and the number pop. And John, that strikes me is that the average drive start in the preseason was 28.8 yard line, so almost the 29-yard line. Now, when you talk about the long return, the 90-some-odd yard return, you got to think now, and if your team's, is it worth the risk when I know I can kick it into the end zone and give them the ball at the 30? So I think that's what we're going to see, and it depends somewhat on the ability of the kicking team and the return team. Things that I have heard, a little bit concerned about the safety of the kicker, who's the last line of defense often. You look at the number of 40-yard plus returns in the preseason this year versus last year, it doubled. So I kind of think that it will be successful if 4 out of 10 are returned. That's kind of where I see it at. And if you don't have a kicking team that does a good job of defending, then I think you just bomb it into the end zone. So it's going to get more returns back in the game. Is it going to be as big as everybody thinks it's going to be? I would say no. But at least we can say that the kickoff is still in the game, and they don't just like have an extra point and then go put the ball at the 25-yard line and say play. So we'll see. The hip drop tackle that everybody was concerned about turned out to be a non-issue for 2 reasons. Number one, in the first 2 weeks of the preseason, there was only one that happened. Wasn't called because officials are going to stay away from calling it. And so, again, I don't think that's going to be an issue. So all in all, I think the great focus is going to be on the kickoff as we head into the season. And, you know, I think I'm like everybody else, right? Okay, preseason is done. It's done. Let's move off of these. Let's move to the regular games. The officials are done with preseason. Did they need preseason? Boy, they need it more than anybody, quite frankly, because they've been basically off all years. They don't really have OTAs and mini camps and all of that kind of stuff, which probably wouldn't be that fruitful anyways. But they're done now, and hopefully, ready to go starting next week, right?
Yeah.
The week after. Yeah.
The great Mike Pereira is joining us. It's Pop and Lund here on The Sports Leader. What you were just saying about the kickoff, Belichick, he said that yesterday. He said if they really wanted kickoff returns, they'd move the thing back so that the kickers couldn't just kick it out every time. He said if he was a head coach, he would have done the same thing in preseason and worked on it. But then come regular season, he said he just would have kicked it out of the end zone and not had him have a return.
I think that, Sean Payton was one of the first that floated the idea of make the touchback go out to the 35. Okay, now you're talking a difference. And so then I do think that would change the thought process. Now, Jerry Jones, who just self-proclaimed himself as the greatest general manager in the NFL, he said that it is not going to change, that the committee is not going to change it. Now, is he on the competition committee? No. Is his son Stephen? Yes. That the owners ultimately have to approve a change from the 30 to the 35? Yes, they do. But I kind of don't think it's going to happen because when you when you look at the number of returns in the preseason and you think, okay, yes, there's experimentation here, I still think they don't want to jump to conclusions. Look, why are we here in the first place? We're here in the first place because of injuries. That's why we're here. So is this kickoff return rule going to increase the number of injuries? Yes, it is, because we're going to have more. So more kickoff returns obviously means more injuries. So how far do they want to go with it? I think they will be content with 4 out of 10 being returned, but we'll wait and see. And also remember now, this is one of the rare cases where it is a 1-year experiment. So this goes out the window after the season's over, and then it has to be brought in. A brand new rule has to be brought in, and obviously at that point, if they intend to stay with it, then there'll be some tweaks. But I think they're on to something here that's going to keep it into the game, which I'm happy to see.
Yeah, and for that reason, that it's a 1-year trial run, the 49ers voted against it. They were one of 3 teams to vote against it. So the NFL is having a special owners meeting right now in Minneapolis. Private equity is why they're having the meeting. But we also heard, Mike, just to clarify what Jerry Jones said and what you're hearing, we heard they were going to possibly take another owner's vote to move if the ball lands in the end zone and not the landing zone, you just kick it out, touch it back, it would go to the 35-yard line where Sean McVay wanted it. And I heard he stormed out of the meeting when they somehow changed it from the 35 to the 30. But to be clear, you are hearing that that's going to be a no vote today in Minneapolis with the owners meeting, Mike?
Well, I'm just repeating what Jerry Jones said. And okay. Jerry Jones said it's not going to change. That's what he said. And he was very adamant about that. So I don't have any other inside information that they are going to stay with it going to the 30 or not. But to me, if they want to increase the number of returns, if they are conscious of the fact that teams are going to be content with giving up basically 1 or 2 yards by kicking it deep in the end zone, they can certainly do that. But we'll have to wait and see.
Mike Pereira joining us. So hip drop tackle, the kickoff, what else do fans have to be weary of, or rule changes or emphasis or anything like that? What else is there?
Well, more damn challenges. Jiminy Christmas. So now you've got the fact that if you are, as in our game, Kyle Shanahan challenged early. This was in the Saints game. Challenged early and lost, and yet he still had the opportunity to get a 3rd challenge because the rule used to state if you won both of your first 2 challenges, then you get a 3rd. Now, if you win 1 out of your first 2, you get a 3rd. So there's some questions as to whether or not this is going to add the number of coaches' challenges, because that number is very low anyways, because all change of possessions are automatically reviewed. Scoring plays are automatically reviewed. But if now you get a 3rd challenge, then I think a coach might be more inclined to challenge something early that he basically knows he's going to win. That's something pretty clear. It's not a game-changing mistake, but it might be a sideline pass, 6-7 yard sideline pass, and it was ruled incomplete. It was a catch. They could challenge that knowing that they still have 2 left. So I think that we will see more challenges. Now, the only thing to hold that down might be the risk, because now you can challenge 3 times, but you have to have a timeout to challenge, and you lose it when you do. So, timeouts are valuable, and maybe that will temper it a little bit. But, the fact that you get a 3rd challenge now probably will lead to more challenges. Other than that, the little things that are different that nobody really reads about, like if a referee or an umpire calls roughing the passer for contact of the head or neck area. If there's no contact of the head or neck area, it is clear that it was shoulder to the chest, then replay through video assist can actually take it off, which they haven't been able to do before. If a quarterback, is deemed to be under pressure and he throws the ball away and intentional grounding is called, replay can look at it to determine if he is under pressure or not. So they call it 2 steps. If a defender is more than 2 steps from him, 2 full running steps from him, then you're not deemed to be under pressure. So you can take that off. They're kind of making this move, which we've talked about for years, kind of acting as a sky judge and letting them get involved when flags are thrown that can be picked up for what they call objective reasons, clear and obvious objective reasons. And so I'm good with that. I'm not a fan of replay any longer, but since we're here, we might as well do all we can to get it right, as long as we don't further screw up the tempo of the game.
And when we do go to the league office for the replay review, last couple of years it's been Walt Anderson who's been the guy, among others, in the office assisting him. And Walt, longtime NFL referee, was promoted when he retired to senior vice president. He would be the one that would be looking at the replay. So Walter's no longer doing that since his son is a game official now. So when we challenge or have a review during the game, Mike, who's going to be the point person in New York?
Well, you've got Mark Butterfield now, who is the VP of Instant Replay. Mark has really been involved with replay since 1999 when we brought it back, so he's got a lot of history there. So I think he's going to be the point man, although Perry Fuel, former coach, is going to be in there. George Stewart, who we all know, at times is in there and can give input. But Walt's also in there. I mean, it's not like he has disappeared out of the building. He is still in the building. He's working with the teams, the GMs, the coaches on rules and rules interpretation. And then he's working with those 5 idiot rules analysts, the ones on the 2 on Fox, the 2 on Fox, the 1 on ESPN, the 1 on
the best.
NBC. Sterator. Get off of Sterator.
Jeez, ever since Miami, man.
He's the new Pereira. We love Sterator.
So he's working with us, making sure that we have all the right information. So I'm not so sure if somebody's going to just lean over and say, Walt, what do you think? And then Walt will give his 2 cents worth. Walt finds himself in a lot of different places, and if he needs to be there, he will be. But Butterfield is going to be the guy that's basically responsible.
So when you were gone, did you miss all those tweets? Because you're going back to work, and now your Twitter Xbox is going to be full of stuff complaining about officials and things like that. Did you miss all that?
No.
He had Tito's by his side. That's all he needed.
I've said it forever. I don't call it social media. I call it anti-social media.
Yes.
The only reason I really did it is because I wanted to keep replenishing my stock of Tito's vodka. So that's what kept me on Twitter. And occasionally I get the urge. I get the urge to go back on, since I haven't done it in a long time, to go back on, because I know that, the big majority of people are actually football fans and not nerds that just love to, rip you for anything you say. So I'm like thinking about, going back on, and I was thinking, well, how do I start? And I said, well, maybe I can start by showing pictures of my recent fishing trip to Montana and the beautiful brown trout that I have cradled in my hands before I released it back into the Smith River. And talk about fishing and instead of football. But I don't know. I suspect in a world where actually I'm trying to cut back a little bit, because I have my foundation that I'm doing with the veterans, giving them opportunities to become officials. That takes a lot of my time. This football takes a lot of my time. So I'm trying to ease the load a little bit, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you deserve it. You deserve it. And it's so good to hear your voice and see you a couple of weeks ago when you were there with the Fox crew. So are you going to be in the studio on NFL Sunday, or are they going to send you on the road with Kevin Burkhardt and your new analyst, Tom Brady?
Yeah, I will say this, Fox has been so good to me. Throughout this whole process, and I didn't work last year, and quite frankly, I didn't know if I'd be working this year either. And this is even after the surgery for a while, until I started to improve. But they told me right off the bat when I surprised them at championship game weekend at their hotel in Palo Alto and walked into their meeting with a pot of coffee and said, "Anybody need any refills?" They talked to me and said, "Next year somebody's got to be with the A crew all the time. So it's up to you. Do you want to travel every weekend and then only have one game you have to do? Is that easier? Do you want to not travel at all and send Blandino on all the road games and you do everything from LA? And or do you want to split?" And split seemed like a reasonable thing to me. So he and I are splitting, and just about every other weekend. And I got first choice. So I obviously took anything west. And, the game in late November in Green Bay, enjoy the trip, Dean. Philadelphia in December, enjoy that trip too, Dean.
Do you have any Niners games? Do you have any Niners games?
Niners, Kansas City, I wouldn't give that one away for the world. I would not give that one away for the world. The only reason I probably should give it away is now every friend I have here in Sacramento is going to say, "Hey, Mike, can you get me some tickets? Can you get me some tickets to the game?" But I'm looking forward to that one. But then, I have some of their games from the studios in LA, but I think at this point that that's the only one I have until the playoffs, I guess.
Awesome. How you feeling? You doing well?
I am. I did just spend almost a full week in Montana, and I did fish pretty much every day, and it was hard. It was physically challenged because it was wading in a river, and the river was low, thank God, but I didn't fall. I almost got eaten by a black bear, but I didn't fall, so that was the good news. But a black bear got within about 20 yards of me on the shore of the Smith River where I was fishing, and my friend that was with me just said, "Hey, Mike, turn around." And I turned around, and there's this bear. And then the bear took one look at me and said, "Hey, he's not worth it." And he went back up the side of the bank. But I told my friend Roger, when you see a bear, you got to make noise. You got to yell. You got to scream. Everybody knows that. You don't just go, "Hey, Mike, turn around." And then, I'm only 20 yards away from the thing, for God's sake. But I'm feeling really pretty good. Look, I can do pretty much everything. I think there are things that I am realizing that I may not ever be able to do because of the surgery. I may not be able to put on a pair of shoes like a normal human being, or a pair of socks. May not be able to play golf again. I'm not sure. I tried a little bit in Montana after trying a couple times here, and I'm just not sure I'm going to make that back. But that's okay. I put my life in quarters. I've kind of figured that out. So every life is a quarter. And so in April, I start the fourth quarter. I wasn't sure I was going to get to the fourth quarter. I really wasn't. I had almost given up hope. And so here I am now, 10 months after the surgery. I'm back at work. I'm walking. I'm driving. I'm fishing. I'm flying. I've got a fourth quarter in front of me again. And so I'm just so thankful for that, and so thankful to a lot of people that have supported me throughout this whole process, and including the network. And I'm going to cut back a little bit, but I'm going to enjoy every single damn day of the rest of my life.
Well said, man.
Fourth quarter in this life is going to overtime. Pereira.
I ain't going to overtime, Pop. No.
I'm taking the ball in the overtime, though. I want the ball. No, let's not go there again. Let's not do that again.
Well, look, we're big fans, obviously, and we're glad you're feeling better. And it really was. I'm not kidding. It was a thrill to see you on TV a couple of weeks ago, and it was really cool. So we're really glad you're back. It's always great to hear your voice. Continued health to you, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Love you, Mikey.
The great Mike Pereira. Make sure you're following him. He's back on Fox, and he just, man, they're not easing him back in. My God, man. He just told us about all the college games and pro games. And
Thursday,
and all that
Friday,
stuff,
8 on Saturday, and then next week. So we'll see him October the 20th. That'll be a Kevin Burkhardt, Tom Brady game when the Kansas City comes in.
All right, stay right there. We've got some cuts, a couple of surprises for the 49ers. Plus, at 12:30, you've been waiting for him. Our good friend Mike Sando, we had on last year, and we were like, How could you have Brock there? But it's not his list. He publishes the list, but he talks to people all around the league, and you'll be happier this time with Brock Purdy. That at 12:30, plus a couple of surprise cuts. We'll tell you him next, only here on the Sports Leader.
In the NFL, there is no margin for error. One mistake can change the outcome of a game. That's why 8 out of 10 NFL players have a Sleep Number smart bed. As the official sleep and wellness partner of the NFL, Sleep Number is proud to help players unlock their full potential through the power of quality sleep. J.D. Power ranks Sleep Number number 1 in customer satisfaction with mattresses purchased in store. Do you have a Sleep Number bed? Now you can get one during Sleep Number's biggest sale of the year. You'll save 50% on the Sleep Number limited edition smart bed. Plus, you get free home delivery on select smart beds when you add a base. It ends Labor Day, September the 2nd. For J.D. Power 2023 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. Only at a Sleep Number store or at sleepnumber.com, the official sleep and wellness partner of the NFL.
and Lund continue live from the KNBR Casino Matrix Progressive Jackpot Studios. Casino Matrix Progressive Jackpots are here. Where are you? Just drop in. Please play responsibly. 1-800-GAMBLER.
Third down coming up for Trey Lance. 1 for 2 on third down, the first series with the run by Sermon. Going to take a deep shot down the left sideline, wide open out there. Danny Gray makes the catch, stays in bounds. Trey Lance to the speedster, Danny Gray on third down.
Now we've seen enough.
Thanks for joining us. Pop and Lund. Cut down day. Third round picks under John and Kyle, feast and famine types. Fred Warner was a third rounder. Jared Brown, he looks like he's going to be good. I'll give it to Moody. He was a third rounder. Dominic Pooney looks like he's going to be a good third rounder. But add to the feast or famine to the third rounders of Witherspoon, Beathard, Jalen Hurts, TDP, Trey Sermon. Add Cam Latu and what you just heard there, Danny Gray. Both Latu and Gray were cut today by the 49ers. I could see them bringing back Latu. He had a good preseason, maybe Gray with his speed, but he just, either was hurt, ineffective, whatever the case may be. But Gray and Latu, the latest two 49ers to be cut.
Yeah, Danny Gray will go down as being most remembered for that play. Trey Lance in the deep one down the left sideline, and it was one of the best balls that Trey threw here, and it was a 76-yard touchdown to Danny Gray, who runs a 4.33 40. That was when Danny was a rookie in 2022, and he played 13 games that year. He caught one pass in his entire time here. Ended a game. He caught a 10-yarder at the end of the Tampa Bay game, December the 11th, and it was the first down that pretty much allowed them to run the clock out, and they were done. I don't think they'll bring Danny Gray back. It's possible with a 16-man, really a 17-man with the International Pathway Program player. You can go to 17, but 16 players, and then, it could be veterans. So they could, because they like his speed, and he has uncommon speed. But this year, Johnny was virtually invisible in training camp. When they drafted him out of SMU, they thought he was not just a 4.33 fast guy, but that he was tough. He showed some physicality, and I saw right away in that first training camp his ability, speed set him up like Tyreek Hill to hit comebacks and curls and outs, and he created huge separation. For whatever reason, it just did not translate onto the field. So I think he's gone. I'm not surprised he was not in the 6 originally, but I don't know if they'll bring him on the practice squad. We'll find that out tomorrow. With Cameron Latu, third-round pick, as you said, but he was more of a projection type because he didn't play tight end at Alabama until later in his career. He was brought there as a DN in high school and an outside linebacker, and they moved him. And he was raw. He made some plays right away in college, some touchdown catches right away. But he's a guy that flashed in the preseason. He caught the ball a lot better. Last year, he dropped everything. In training camp, he dropped the ball. He missed the entire year. They put him on IR last year with a knee. He didn't play. There were a couple of situations in the preseason that you just wonder, where are you going here? The end of the game in Nashville, we talked about it the next day, or when we got back on Monday. He caught a couple of passes there at the end of the game from Joshua Dobbs and went out of bounds on both, which was fine. But after the second one, he's tapping his helmet that he wants off the field. He's tired. You're like, what? It's a 2-minute drill, 50 seconds to go in the game. You're driving for a winning score here, and you want off the field at the end? And there were some other mistakes as far as, blitz pickup and blocking in versus blocking out in the Raider game. So I had him on the 53, in which we'll get to Braden Willis, who actually played in the Super Bowl last year when George Kittle got hurt, and he played 7 games last year. And, he's a guy with a reputation, Braden Willis, for being his nickname in college at Oklahoma was Weight Room Willie. And you thought this guy's going to be a great inline blocker, take over for Charlie Warner. And it didn't translate necessarily to the blocking sled, working out with Brian Fleury, the tight end coach, or on game day. They used him in that fullback spot when Juice wasn't out there, but he wasn't great at it. So what does it all mean? They could sign one or both of these young players who are just going into their second year, John, to the practice squad, but they're not going to be on the 53. They're not vested veterans that you play that roster manipulation game where you cut them and bring them back so you don't have to pay them. First of all, will somebody pick them up before they could get to the practice squad? Do the Niners want them on the practice squad? But this is kind of like the NBA draft lottery where, we're overturning logos and we're knowing who did not win the lottery. If they're not on the roster, George Kittle and Eric Saubert, I think, are locked. Saubert's going to make this team. If it's not Latu and Willis, do they want 4? Will they keep 3 on the team and go less on offense? When I had my roster, I had 27 on offense, 25 on defense, and I even got to lose a couple of defensive players. But would they go 3 tight ends on the roster and not 4? And would it be Logan Thomas, the veteran, or the young guys? Jake Tonjes, who is from Los Gatos High, went to Cal, and then played for the Chicago Bears briefly. They're both good route runners with good hands. I think Mason Pline may go to the practice squad. So they've got to add another tight end. You can't go into the year with 3. You think you want 3 up on game day. Would you have 4 on the roster? So if not Latu and Willis, who are going to be the guys in the room behind Kittle and Saubert now, John?
I would imagine, Willis showed something. I would think he might come back. Pline is a really interesting guy, like the college basketball type that everybody is kind of looking for. He's an interesting, but like you said, you look at all of them and you could make a case for a lot of them to come back to the practice squad, but not everybody is. Latu was basically redshirted last year. It's just, to me, it's a lot of resources because third-round picks, Fred Warner is the best one of the group there, and I got to give it to Jake Moody. He was kind of a sandwich pick there, 3rd, 4th, whatever. Jair Brown, I think, is going to be solid. But, man, they've used a lot of resources on third-round picks that have not just not made this team. I'm talking about guys who and when it comes to Jalen Hurd, for example, Jalen Hurd's a guy that, he got hurt, so it's not all his fault. But still, you're looking at Weatherspoon, Beathard, Hurd, Ty Davis-Price, Trey Sermon, Ambry Thomas, who's hurt now. I don't know they would have made this team anyway. Cam Latu, Danny Gray were cut today. Third-round picks are supposed to be starters. That's what, I'm not saying they're going to be superstars, but that's a high pick. A third-round pick is still a pretty high pick. And they've gotten Fred Warner, who's been great, Jair Brown, Jake Moody, Dom Pooney looks like a keeper this year. But, man, it hurts when a Cam Latu, can't make your team and basically was redshirted last year because he was fairly clueless. And like you said, he's trying to make the team. But the 2 running backs they took, they've had good mid-rounds. But the 3rd round, Fred Warner was great. But, man, they have struggled, and that's a big round. You got to get some players there.
All right, so you could. We'll see what the league says about Latu and Willis. They could get claimed and they could be gone. If you sneak them on the practice squad, one or both, do you manipulate the roster by going lighter on tight ends and elevate these guys to the 53 on a Saturday before the game? You don't typically do that with younger players, but it really doesn't matter whether you're on the practice squad or on the 53 throughout the week. You can work the same. They bleed together. So are they going to? Who's going to be a 3rd and 4th tight end on the 53? Assuming they do it, did Jake Tonjes show enough that he's not going to be? Do they think we can't cut him? Somebody's going to pick him up, so he would go on the 53. Mason Pline, I thought, would be a practice squad guy. How many practice squad tight ends do you want? And I think the huge X factor here is Logan Thomas, who is an intriguing guy. He was a 4th-round draft pick of the Arizona Cardinals in 2014 as a quarterback. And I remember he threw like 1 pass in the NFL and it went 81 yards for a touchdown. And then when Buffalo got him, he was in Arizona for 1 year, a couple of games, played quarterback, not a lot. He was out of the league for a while. When Buffalo brought him in 2017, they made him a tight end. And he had a year in Washington in 2020. He caught 72 passes for 6 touchdowns. And we saw a lot of the Commanders the last couple of years. We saw him last year, and he caught 55 that year and scored 4 touchdowns. So he's caught 219 footballs for 2,000 yards and 16 touchdowns. The Niners cut him last week or a week before. And I remember, why'd they cut Logan Thomas? And then they brought him back right before the Raider game. And I thought, what's going on here? And then he didn't play. I thought they needed him to play in the Raider game just for bodies. He didn't play in that game. So it's kind of a weird deal. He did go to Nashville and tight end U with Kittle and Saubert and Mason Pline, John. Could they give the third tight end job to Logan Thomas and go Kittle, Saubert, Thomas, maybe Tunges, and then bring some of these guys back to go on the practice squad? But did Logan Thomas just make the team in an indirect route?
Yeah, I think he did because look, I don't know Logan Thomas at all, but let's just use a little bit of logic here. He gets cut. I thought, like you said, a couple of years ago, he even caught 50-plus passes. It hasn't been that long that he was very effective. And if you just look at what they need and what they have, George Kittle can do both. Saubert is a blocker, and Thomas is a pass catcher. So that makes a lot of sense. And then if you bring back some of these other guys, they can be blockers or whatever the case may be. But Thomas clearly is your best receiver of the three. So if he was your third tight end, you have Kittle who can do both, Saubert who can block, and Logan Thomas who can catch. That makes sense. And they haven't had a second threat as a pass receiver since, Reed, the guy they got from Washington who got hurt? I mean, they've been looking forever.
Reed.
They've been looking forever to get another guy who could catch a ball.
The other factor is Logan Thomas is an older player. This is his 10th year. So he's a vested veteran.
Oh, I see, yeah. You cut him, you bring him back.
So if you put him on the roster today, you got to pay him the entire year. Do you like him that much? He hasn't. I've seen him in camp, and he looks fine, but he didn't really play much in the preseason. So, I mean, what they could be doing is just banking on Braden Willis not getting picked up and making the practice squad and elevating him on Saturday at 1 o'clock for a Sunday 1 o'clock game to the 53. So they could be juggling the tight end position. Kittle and Saubert are locks, but you need 3 up on game day. There's a lot of teams. The Raiders are going to run 12 personnel, I think, as their base this year. They're going to have 2 tight ends on the field. The Niners don't do that a lot, but you run 2 tights, so you got to have 3 up in case one gets hurt in the game to run double tights. So you got to have 3. So maybe they just sit on these guys and they cut everybody else. I thought Pline might go to the practice squad, or Tunges. They could still do that. Maybe they just let Latu and Willis go and they move Tunges and Pline to the practice squad. But I think the interesting aspect of this is because of his track record is Logan Thomas. What do they do with him? Maybe not put him on the 53 right away, because you got to pay him as a vested veteran the entire year. But now that you could put 6 of the 16 can be veteran players, John, you slide to the practice squad. So no surprise that they cut Danny Gray, and I think mild surprise is that at least for right now, Latu and Willis are out there. If another NFL team likes Cam Latu and Braden Willis, they can go bring him in right now. They're free guys.
I think we overestimate that kind of stuff. I don't think either of those guys have showed enough to go onto a roster. I mean, they might go to somebody else's practice squad because they think they have a better opportunity. I mean, they may look at what the 49ers have as far as tight ends, because they got a lot of them, and say, maybe I got another opportunity that I could take that's somewhere else to make a team eventually, because it's a deep tight end room. I don't know that they have the top end, but they have a lot of guys. And like if I look at Cam Latu right now, even though he was a third rounder, I don't think he's much better than anybody else they have on the team. Willis didn't show a ton. I thought he was going to be better than he is, but you talked about this yesterday. He can't block. He's basically a 240-pound split out type of tight end, a move tight end. He's not going to be a guy that's going to block anybody, so he's got limitations. Well, they've probably got better opportunities than that. So I wouldn't be surprised if these guys ended up on other practice squads. I just don't think they've shown enough to go on to a 53.
It depends. They're both young players. They're in their second year. So an evaluation would be, did you like him coming out in the draft? Willis, his nickname at Oklahoma was Weight Room Willie. Why can't he block? He looks like he can lift in the weight room, but he just hasn't been able to do it yet in the NFL. But interesting. But Danny Gray, wow. The one from Trey in the preseason game was the biggest play. He had exactly 1 catch as a 49er. And I think I would bring Ronnie Bell, assuming Ronnie does not make the 53, and we'll see where it all goes, John. I would bring Ronnie Bell to the practice squad because he can run back punts and play on special teams. He became a good gunner last year. Trent Taylor, if they cut him between now and 1 o'clock, certainly put him on the practice squad. I mean, the thing about Danny Gray, does he play special teams? He doesn't play teams, so it's hard for him to make a roster as a 5th and 6th wide receiver. And then even on the practice squad, what role does he have?
Well, and the other thing, too, is the 49ers have shown little patience with players who can't stay healthy. And Danny Gray hasn't been able to stay healthy. And that would be, even though he has speed that is intriguing, which is the very reason they took him in the 3rd round at SMU, when you're not reliable, regardless you're on a practice squad or whatever the case may be, he hasn't shown that ability. And I think there's a frustration there, and other guys are going to get opportunities to be able to prove that they can at least stay healthy and then contribute. So anyway, we'll keep you up to date on everything else. But again, a couple of third-rounders, Danny Gray, Cam Latu, they are out at least right now before the practice squads get available, as today is cut-down day, and we'll keep you up to date on everything. Bottom of the hour, you've been waiting for it, the quarterback tiers. Mike Sando, we welcome him back. We talked to him last year about it, and he's got Brock Purdy moving on up. We'll do that in about 15 minutes, only here on the Sports Leader.
Now, from the O'Donnell Financial Group Sports Desk. Learn more at odfigroup.com. O'Donnell Financial Group, because planning is a process, not a product.
The great Marcus Thompson of The Athletic joined Murph and Marcus this morning, discussing the importance of the Niners getting a deal done with, yes, Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk before Week 1. Check out that podcast and more on the KNBR app, YouTube, and KNBR socials. It is always great to talk to our friend Steve Moskowitz. He has the answers to your tax issues, those ones that are keeping you up at night, including the big one. Steve, what do people do if they can't pay their taxes?
They call us and let us handle it for them. You know, up at night, there's so many clients that are listening to your station in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, hoping that their spouse doesn't wake up and say what's wrong. It's a horrible burden. You're not a bad person because you can't pay your taxes. You're not an axe murderer. You just can't pay your taxes. And a lot of times the bills the government sends out are wrong. If that's your case, we'll get that corrected. Also, if you haven't filed tax returns, the government prepares punishment returns. They're called SFRs. And just filing the return may solve that problem. But if you really owe some money, there's so many good solutions, like making a deal where you just pay part and the government forgives the rest, or you pay them in monthly installments that you can afford, not what some IRS agent says you can afford, but what you say you can afford. Or you get the penalties forgiven, that can be a big savings. Or they leave you alone until you're back on your feet financially. Or we shift the problem back where it belongs, to your ex-spouse or ex-business partner. The bottom line is there's so much we want to do for you. The only thing you have to do is pick up the phone and say, hey, Steve, how do you get me out of this mess?
That's my favorite part, when Steve says that. Hey, Steve, literally just call him and say, how do you get me out of this mess? It's that simple. All you have to do is call 888-TAX-DEAL. Pick up the phone right now, 888-TAX-DEAL, or go online to MoskowitzLLP.com.
And now, time for the Protect Your Assets with David Hollander Business and Technology Report. They're Papa and Lund, or Greg and John if you want to get personal. Got Google Nest? If so, listen to the sports leader at home. This is KNBR 104.5 and 680.
Hey there, Pop and Lund. So far, Tanner Mordecai, Robbie Chosen, Danny Gray, Braden Willis, Kamla 2. We'll wait to hear on more. By the way, I haven't seen the new George Kittle commercial, but he's got like a skullet. You know, he's got like the bald head and the long hair in the back, and he was talking about it on Pat McAfee today because McAfee was wearing some weird wig that was supposed to mimic Kittle. So we got to get some of that audio. We'll do that. We have the foreplay at 1 o'clock. Play some of that in the 1 o'clock hour. But, yeah, he's got a new ad out. You and I was talking about what Niners have, what ads.
How many ads does George Kittle have?
Well,
not as many as Travis Kelce.
I was just going to say.
What's the number for Kelce?
First of all, he better get on his knees and thank Taylor Swift for all this stuff he's getting. Because, okay. I mean, it's because
he had a lot before
He did, but not like this. I mean,
he has 127 national ads.
It's like, let's see.
He has more than Mahomes?
He has more than everybody in the league. So, first of all, you know.
More than double any other player in the league.
This is what happened to Travis Kelce today. So, 83,000 airings in the last 30 days for Travis Kelce ads. More than anyone in the world. So, and he's going to have 100, like you said, 127 national TV ads aired, which is double any other player in the league. So that's the effect.
Not as many as Brock Purdy.
Oh, my gosh.
Come on.
So that's the effect of his lovely girlfriend. And then Travis and Jason Kelce have inked a $100 million deal for the New Heights podcast. 3 years, $100 million. That does not happen without her.
What the hell are we doing? $100 million on a podcast?
Could you steal?
Yeesh.
Could you steal Taylor Swift away from him? Because that's what it's going to take.
Nah.
Well, the Swifties
he was reasonably popular before.
I agree with you, reasonably, but not like this is
Good
nuts.
luck. It's not worth $100 million.
This is nuts.
Yeah.
So $100 million.
On tour forever. When is the tour going to end?
Plus, I mean, you got to have enough money for the rest of your life, don't you? Like 10,000 times your family's and you can take care of a lot of people. But anyway, yeah, Travis Kelce, 127 national aired TV ads, double any other player, and he and Jason signed a $100 million deal for New Heights over 3 years. My goodness, man.
So why does Kelsey bother with going into
I
the
don't know.
Monday Night Football studio in Bristol, Connecticut?
It's a great
the hell
question.
am I going there for? They're not paying him $100 million.
Man,
How crazy.
that is nuts.
Well, they can all thank one guy, and that's Patrick Mahomes, even Travis Kelsey. I wonder, would he be dating Taylor Swift if Mahomes wasn't his quarterback?
Hell no. That's a good point.
Well, I don't know. He'd be on the team. They would have met her. He would have sent her out the friendship bracelet. I don't know. So Sando's coming on. Sando's done this now for 11 years.
Yeah.
Why? And it's not his. We'll get to the bottom of it. He talks to NFL people. So the only Tier 1 quarterbacks are Mahomes, Josh Allen, and here's the one for me, because they dropped a lot of great players out because of injury. Aaron Rodgers and Justin Herbert's now Tier 2. And I love Joe Burrow. I don't disagree with that. But did Joe Burrow play enough games last year to stay as a Tier 1 quarterback?
That's a good question. You know, what's interesting too is, and again, this is GMs, this is coaches, this is the people he has talked to and selected. Lamar Jackson won the MVP, but he's the 4th, and he's in Tier 2. He's not a Tier 1 guy, so that's interesting.
Yeah, I'd even drop him down. I mean, Herbert and Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, C.J. Stroud, Dak, Goff. They're like, Jalen Hurts is still ranked higher than Brock Purdy?
We're going to talk about that. He didn't have a good year.
Seriously?
Did not have a good year last year.
So it was a tie for 5th. So Brock is not 12th. He's 13th then.
Yeah.
Number 13
But they
is
moved
13.
him up. They moved him up quite a bit, these people. And they still think he has something to prove. But
Wasn't he 4th in the MVP?
He was. So let's get into it. It is Mike, and he's doing a tour. I've seen Mike all over the place. Actually heard him on my drive home yesterday. He was in Seattle, and they were talking about Geno Smith. I'm like, Geno Smith? Come on. But they did
good in that last preseason game.
They did talk about Brock, though. I did hear him talking about Brock up in Seattle, and they begrudgingly, even on Seattle radio, had to say that Brock's pretty damn good. So let's get into the conversation. Mike Sando of The Athletic has done this for many, many years, talks to many people across the NFL, and then he just gives you the results, but everybody screams at him. How could your rankings have this? So we'll talk to Mike about it. And last year, that's exactly what we did. We're like, are you insane? But Brock Purdy has moved up 13 spots. So let's talk to Mike Sando about it right now on The Sports Leader.
Hey, it's Greg Papa here, and I got great news for homeowners. Mortgage rates are tanking. My friends at Loan Pronto have rates that start with a 4, the best rates in years. Listen, if your current rate is over 6%, you can dump it and lower your house payment big time. Loan Pronto has locked in folks recently at 4.99% APR. Whether you got your loan last week, last month, or last year, it is time right now to call Loan Pronto. Do it pronto. Even if you're in the process with another lender, stop now and call Loan Pronto and ask about their zero-cost rate reduction home loan. You can lock in a lower rate with no closing costs in a matter of days. You can also do it with no paperwork and usually no appraisal. And if you act now, you could even skip your next 2 house payments. So call now. Loan Pronto can give you a rate quote in minutes with no hard credit pull and no upfront fees like those other guys. So call 415-808-5721, loanpronto.com, or 415-808-5721.
Listen to the sports leader anywhere, anytime. Download the all-new KNBR app. We are your proud home of 49ers football. KNBR 104.5 FM and 680 AM.
Thanks for joining us, Bob and Lund, on a Tuesday edition of the show. And I don't know if there's anything that is talked about more now than Mike Sando's quarterback tears when they come out. Everybody freaks out. I've seen and heard Mike everywhere. I was driving home yesterday, popped on my friend Ian Furness up in Seattle, and Mike was on there talking about quarterback tears. So everybody loves talking about their quarterback, defending their quarterback, and we love talking to Mike about it as we did last year when we're like, Mike, you're crazy. Why is Brock Purdy so low or high or low or however they put him? But anyway, he hasn't moved Brock up. He's got the results. So we got to explain how this whole thing works. But make sure you're following Mike. He's great at Sando NFL for The Athletics. Been covering the NFL for many, many years. Does a great weekly column after every game in the regular season. It's must-read stuff. And Mike joins us courtesy of the Yuma guest line. Hi, Mike.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I love this time of year. I love it when it comes out and comes together and we can talk about it. It's fun.
Will you explain to us first, because I think some people are guilty and they say they're Mike's ratings, and they're not Mike's ratings. You go out and you talk to numerous people. So explain before we get into this thing exactly how this works.
So once the draft is done, we know who's on each team and the quarterbacks and who's likely to start or is a candidate to. So you put together a list of all these veterans. I don't put the rookies in. And then I will go to 50 people in the league that are coaches or executives and people that I have relationships and trust with, can speak candidly and freely with them. And I will present to them or remind them, show them what the criteria of the tiers are. Basically, tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 would be not a starter. 1 would be, at the very top, Patrick Mahomes, and in between, different shades of really how much help this quarterback needs to be functional, be excellent, to win a Super Bowl, right? And so the guys that are really up there in tier 1 need, in theory, a little bit less help. Patrick Mahomes being the ultimate example of somebody who has won Super Bowls with low-ranked defenses. Doesn't usually happen that way. Even for the all-time greats, Joe Montana, Tom Brady, they had good defensive supporting casts that made it easier to win the games. So that's the ultimate level of a one, and I'll go through all these quarterbacks with all 50 of the coaches and executives, and I'll get there which tier they would put each quarterback in and why, and then I'll tally up the results and sort them. Of course, I sort them as we go, so I can kind of see it coming together, and then we'll have it. And what was really notable this year was there were only 3 quarterbacks in tier 1. I had a couple ballots or a few ballots that came in where only Mahomes was listed as tier 1. So, and then on the other extreme, you might have somebody who has 7 tier 1s, that type of thing. But that's why we talk to 50. We gather them. It's not just 1 or 10 because you could get skewed. This sort of becomes a market analysis of what the league thinks right or wrong about the quarterbacks.
Man, and the way the 50 is broken down, Mike, is you're right. 7 are general managers, 8 are head coaches, 12 are coordinators, 12 are executives, 8 assistant coaches, and 3 involved in coaching / analytics. My question is, did the 50 change dramatically from last year and year to year? Because we're going to talk about the evaluation of Brock Purdy and how he jumped considerably. Do you go to the same 50 guys every year and last year? How does that work?
No, I would. That's a great question. I think I figured that out one time. I mean, I would bet you that more than half of the guys that were in it last year would be in it again, but not. It's certainly not all 50, or it's probably not. I'd have to guess, but I would say there's probably 15 or 20 new people every year that come in. So if you're really super close, if there's a guy right on the borderline, of course. If you had 10 different people, maybe 2 votes would switch over. You wouldn't have somebody go rocketing, but you could have a little bit of, like for an example, Lamar Jackson had 23 votes in tier 1. And so, if there were 3 guys that went the other way and he had 26 in tier 1, he'd cross the line. He'd be in tier 1. So, no doubt you could have little nuances change, but I think overall, any 50 is probably similar to another 50.
Mike Sando joining us. Make sure you're following him at Sando NFL from The Athletic, and he does the QB tiers, and everybody gets all worked up over the whole thing. It's a great process. So let's just jump to Brock because we're here in the Bay Area, and I remember talking to you last year, and there just wasn't enough information for some, and they wanted a little bit more. But having the season that he had, obviously moved him up the board 13 spots. What was the general reaction this year versus last in regards to Brock?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talked last year, he was right on the border of tier 3 and 4, and you wondered how that could be. And it's just because he said he had 5 or 6 starts, and people were like, I'm just going to give him a 4 until wait and see. Now you've seen really good production the whole year. Of course, people point out, he's never heard this. He's got a great supporting cast. He's got an amazing play caller. But if you produce consistently, you're going to get some credit too. And I think if Brock Purdy has another year like last year, I think he'll move up more. Even within tier 2. Do I see him possibly going to tier 1? I think he'd have to really stack him for a long time and see the complexion of the team change. And, he'll be getting paid at that point, and that becomes a whole different challenge to be that excellent. But I think he's solidly in tier 2, and it would have been, wrong if he was lower than that.
Yeah, and I mean, the way you actually have them ranked based on the votes they got in each tier. So Brock was, 26 last year, and he jumped up 13 spots to get to number 13. Mm-hmm. Jordan Love also had a dramatic jump up, but I want to get your thoughts on that. But just the one spot that's ahead of him is Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts was second in the MVP the year before and got to the Super Bowl and, could have won the game. Had they won the game, he would have been the MVP of the Super Bowl. But I thought his play fell off dramatically last year and was a bit exposed. What were just your thoughts on the tabulation where, again, you're ranking them by tiers, but Jalen Hurts did come in 1 spot ahead of Brock Purdy in your poll, Mike?
So it's a little bit of ships passing in the night here where I think Hurts came down some. Maybe not as much as I thought he might come down. I think people were a little understanding of a pretty bad situation there, but in terms of just the way their season, they were 10-1, I think, at one point, but their season went off the rails, and there was a lot of kind of stuff going on with the coaching staff and that sort of a thing. So he did drop down, and Brock was surging up. So, it's a snapshot in time. Maybe halfway through this season, Brock keeps rising and Hurts in people's minds falls a little more. We'll have to wait and see. But I don't think anybody explicitly said, you know what? I think Jalen Hurts is better than Brock Purdy. He just started from a higher place, a higher reference point, and came down, but not so far down that Brock passed him. But they're right. I mean, 2.30 average vote for Hurts, 2.32 for Purdy. It's 1 vote. It's really like 1 vote. It's 1 vote difference. In fact, looking at their totals, the only difference is Jalen Hurts got a single top-tier vote. Otherwise, they're the exact same. So, pretty close, and 2 players that have...
Howie Roseman voted for his own guy, huh? Is that what it was?
No, right. No. But how do you, there are 2 guys that have overcome lower expectations with good teams and good supporting casts where you're not always 100% sure how much credit to give to who, but both are respected and both are good. I think people respect Hurts' approach to the game and that sort of a thing, and I think that helped him.
Yeah, how does that work? Are coaches and execs allowed to vote for their own players?
Of course, you would have people. Otherwise, you wouldn't have anybody in the league. I mean, because every quarterback's in here, so of course you would have anybody could do it, and you'd be surprised possibly at how honest people are. Like, that's what's the funny thing about it when sometimes fans will be like, "Oh, come on, our guy's higher than that." I'm thinking in my head, yeah, you got to see what your team thinks. Your team agrees with the, people internally are pretty honest and know what they have. If I'm talking to somebody and they're given a ridiculous guy at tier 1, I'm not talking to them again. You know what I mean? It's just guys don't do that. They have enough respect for the process, and they know what they're playing with.
It's almost the opposite, right? They might have their guy a little bit lower because they know the intricacies. That's interesting.
They can see the warts of it for sure. Yeah, guys are honest about it. And totally. And then there's some guys who have a little bit higher of a grading scale throughout the whole league, and some are a little bit lower. Just I do that. I'll take like an average tier vote for each voter. I kind of look at that, and there'll be a swing. Some guys are like singing an octave higher than the others, you know?
What I always think is interesting, and I agree with the tier. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, I could put him in a tier 1 just because I think he's so separate from everybody else, but Burrow and Allen are in tier 1. But the guy who I think is really hard to evaluate for some people is Lamar Jackson because, like you said, he got the 23. He gets into tier 2 despite the fact that he's the MVP. If you're somebody who likes more of a traditional quarterback like Kyle Shanahan does, I've called a play, I've researched this play, I want you to execute the play as is, and they don't like as much of the improv that Lamar brings to the table, or they want to criticize his throwing even though it's gotten a lot better. Is he kind of the most polarizing one where some people love him for a certain offense, but you'd love to have him, but then I don't know if you put playoff success in or if people knock him for that. So what is it like when you evaluate or when they evaluate him?
Yeah, I think everybody likes him, but they don't always know how to account for this one part of the tier 1 description. I'm going to read tier 1. Carries team each week. Yep. Team wins because of him. Sure. Expertly handles pure pass situations. No real holes in his game. Well, pure pass means when we have to pass the ball, when it's not our choice, what does it look like? And I think we have seen some quarterbacks who are good passers. They pass the ball effectively. But when they absolutely have to pass the ball, trailing Kansas City in the playoffs or other high-leverage situations, it can look rough around the edges. I think an extreme example of that would be Tua Tagovailoa, a very fine passer when it's schemed up for him. Incredibly accurate, maybe the most accurate guy in the league. When they're in a hurry-up or 2-minute situation and the running game and Mike McDaniel's run scheming doesn't mean anything, and they're playing the Chiefs, it looked horrible, right? And so Lamar Jackson's a little bit in between those two. He's on a really good team with a great defense. They're rarely behind. But when they have been behind or when he has had to pass, it hasn't looked nearly as good, and there's been some notable kind of failures. So that component of tier 1, it comes down to the voter. Do they think that should remain a sticking point for anybody in tier 1, even a super dynamic player? And people are torn. You can see that because the votes are split down the middle pretty much. But he surged up. I mean, I think everybody thought he passed better this last year. His number of tier 1 votes went way up, and he's right on the brink. And like I said, in this case, maybe talking to 5 different people, maybe 2 votes switch, and then he's at the bottom of tier 1, but he's a top 5 quarterback in this thing, top 4.
So you only have 3 quarterbacks in tier 1, the fewest since 2016, Patrick Mahomes. Joe Burrow played only 10 games and really was only healthy in a couple of them, and we saw it at Levi's how good he is, but he stayed in tier 1. And Josh Allen, and as you mentioned, Lamar won the MVP, starts tier 2 with Justin Herbert and Matthew Stafford. But I want to ask you about the guy who I guess is 8th, and it's Aaron Rodgers. And, he only played 4 snaps last year, and he tore the Achilles. How much is that in his ranking? Or was it his last year in Green Bay, Mike, was not great. He threw 12 interceptions in that. And then he had the injury last year. So where do the NFL talent evaluators, coaches, and GMs, how do they view Aaron Rodgers right now at age 40 coming off the Achilles tear?
Yeah, so he comes in 7th, and he's never been outside of tier 1. He's been in this thing every year. So 23 votes get in tier 1, and then he actually 18 in tier 2, 7 in tier 3, and 2 in tier 4, which can be like, I don't know, I don't have enough information. How healthy is he? The question people have is just at this age, coming off an injury, going to a new team, playing on turf, some people want to see it again at that level before just granting him a 1. So he was a little confounding for folks. I wouldn't have had a problem if people just benefited the doubt of him and gave him a 1 until they saw him play at a poor level. But you're right, it wasn't as nice, probably his last year in Green Bay. And I think at his age, with that injury, you're wondering, is he going to make it through a whole year?
Great to talk to Mike Sando, the quarterback tiers, which everybody loves to talk about. Jared Goff is interesting to me, and I'm surprised he's as high as 10. And I know what Detroit did, former Cal quarterback, the Rams trade him, all that kind of stuff. But he's great. I don't know how you kind of decipher this, because he's great inside, and they have a lot of games inside this year, so I think he's going to have a really good year. But then if you put him outside, he's a totally different quarterback. So what was the responses on him?
It's interesting you say that. That's true with a lot of quarterbacks I've noticed. I was doing some splits like that. There was Geno Smith, indoor-outdoor, was interesting too, or that sort of a component. So, yeah, I think for some of these guys playing indoors, like Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta, it's probably good for him, or Jared Goff going for Detroit. It is easier to play in those types of conditions. That's one of the reasons why Buffalo took Josh Allen. So Goff, to me, is a perfect example of how much what's around you does matter, because he had the worst possible situation starting out with the Rams, looked terrible, laughable, then had a great team put around him with a great coach, went to the Super Bowl, fell a little bit as their team eroded, then gets in Detroit, and they put a good team around him, and he's good again. So he's certainly talented, not going to create a lot of things on his own, but if it's all set up nice around him, he can really operate the offense. Now, do you feel like he's going to make the huge plays to beat one of those elite quarterbacks in a Super Bowl game? I don't know. But you might be able to get there with him. We've seen that you can.
Good stuff. Hey, Mike, congratulations on it. It's so cool. And like I said, it's cool seeing you everywhere. You're jumping around, talking to everybody, because people are just so intrigued by this whole thing. Well done again. And I know we'll talk to you throughout the season, but we always enjoy your work. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it, man.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, that is, there you go, Mike Sando. What do you think? Only 3 in Tier 1, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I love Joe Burrow, and I do. I'm impressed that the people that know appreciate his ability. We saw how good he can be when he's healthy, and he was only healthy for a handful of games. He had the calf injury early, and then later was out the year, but he's that good of a player. He just does not turn the ball over like Josh Allen. Dak Prescott, at number 9 overall, and Dak had a hell of a year statistically last year, but a lack of a playoff resume. I mean, just look at the guys that are ahead of Brock. C.J. Stroud, he had a tremendous rookie year. Really good. Well, was it better than Brock's rookie year, the way Brock was able to play? I mean, Brock took the Niners to the NFC Championship game. C.J. did win a home playoff game. And then you've got, guys that are in your conference, Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts, and then Jordan Love is behind him. So, you look at some of these quarterbacks, and we're not going to see them. We'll see Mahomes October the 20th. You don't play the Bengals this year, the Bills in Buffalo, and just right after Thanksgiving. And then Stafford, obviously, and what he's able to do with the Rams. And just the guys around the NFC, John, they still think in the NFC that Matthew Stafford's a better player, Dak Prescott's a better player, Jared Goff's a better player, and Jalen Hurts is a better player than Brock Purdy. I don't know if I see it. All that. I like Stafford. I mean, would you say that Jalen Hurts, Jared Goff, and Dak Prescott are better than Brock Purdy?
No. Now, Dak, he had a hell of a year, and, Brock beats him in the playoffs and everything. So I look, statistically. The thing that I always, and Mike said this, and again, it's because of people he talked to around the league, and this is what surprises me the most. They know Kyle's offense and the way that he's executing it, and he always gets this, they got tons of talent. Does Jalen Hurts have tons of talent? Because I know he has 2 wide receivers, one making 32 and making a lot, and he has Saquon in the back, and he has one of the best offensive lines in the league, and they have a pretty damn good tight end. I mean, there's a lot of talent on that team. If you look across this, and, he mentioned Kansas City not having a great defense at times. They had a great one last year, and Mahomes didn't, other than Kelsey, didn't have a whole lot of offense around him last year. That's how you determine whether somebody's really great. But through the test of time of quarterbacks, and this is maybe the number one thing that bothers me when people talk about the situation. I mean, Joe had a lot of good talent around him, and he had a pretty damn good head coach. Most quarterbacks, when they're successful, have both. They have a great play caller. They have great weapons around them, some lesser than others. Brady didn't have great talent a lot of times around him, but did have Belichick and did have that defense. All quarterbacks have something. None of them do it by themselves. I've yet to see a quarterback in the history of the league do it by themselves, whether it's not a great defense or a play caller or, in Belichick's case, a great defensive coach or whatever. They all have these benefits, and yet for some reason, Brock gets penalized for them. And it's brought up again and again and again. These are experts that were part of this poll from Mike Sando, and yet they bring up again the talent. Yeah, he's got a lot of talent. So does Jared Goff. I mean, the kind of guys that they put around Jared Goff, that's why the Bears spent all this money to put around stuff around Caleb Williams, because they don't want him to be Bryce Young in Carolina. You got to have talent around you. And most, if not, and not most, all quarterbacks in some way, shape, or form have had talent. and play callers and coaches and defenses and all these things, but yet they don't seem to get penalized as much for it as Brock does. It's weird to me.
Bryce Young played really well in Buffalo on Saturday. I think he's going to have a bounce-back year last year. There are a lot of factors to him struggling his rookie year, but I'd like to see Mike Sando 1 year. He does this now 11 consecutive years.